Welcome to the table. Today's guest is Shannon Rowbury. She's a three-time Olympian and has been consistently one of the best middle distance runners in the world over the last 10, 12 years. Shannon, welcome to the table.
Hi, Bob. How are you? Good to be here today.
Good to have you on the show. I can't think of a year that has been as challenging, not just in day-to-day lives of the average person, but for athletes as well, given the COVID-19 situation. How has that impacted your life, and how has that impacted your racing?
Yeah, I think everybody has a COVID story of how their life has been changed and altered. For me, my personal journey in San Francisco, they were really early to adopt rules and regulations about COVID. So things like shelter in place started here. I think it was March 17th. And so within the course of 3 days, I remember it was like, there might be some restrictions at San Francisco State University. I trained with the guys there. My team's based in Portland, but I trained with the men's team. And so within 3 days, it went from like things being totally normal to the practices canceled, the season canceled, sheltering in place. And then a week after that, the Olympics were postponed. And, I think for me, my biggest COVID emotion at first was loneliness. I had come home and moved back to San Francisco in 2017, understanding that I would be leaving behind my team in Portland. But my coach, Pete Julian, and I talked a lot about how important it was to be in a place where I felt happy and supported. And I'd spent, 3 years kind of putting together a good community for myself that could support me in my training. And so for that to be taken away, to not have access to gyms or tracks, it was, I just felt so isolated. And luckily, my husband's supportive and he'd hop on the bike because I'd run from the house and I'd do fartleks for workouts. And I just made do. At the end of the day, public health is much more important than anything else, and then certainly than my training. But I was, trying to figure out ways to respect the rules and to do my part and still accomplish what I needed to do for training. So I felt like so I was able to do some races this summer. I was up in Portland in July and I did some races there. And then I went to Europe for about a month and I got some races over there as well, which I feel very fortunate about. The racing environment included, COVID tests once, maybe sometimes twice before every race that I did. Right. In Europe, a lot of the hotels were like supposed to be bubbles. And so, couldn't be traveling with family. It was just, it was a lot of adjustment, a lot of work on everybody's parts to even make those races happen. So I'm grateful that I got to be a part of them. But I ran well. I ran, I think, my second best time ever in the 5K. I ran. It
was 14:45, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. And so I was proud of that accomplishment. And then I ran an Olympic standard. They don't count this summer, but I ran a 4:02 for the 1500, which I'm proud of. I could see where the kind of chinks in my armor were from the lack of consistent training that I would normally do. But all things considered, when I put in perspective kind of how the training went, making it work with a child without babysitters, my family was helping support me, lots of just adjustments and kind of taking it as it comes. And, but grateful that I was able to put some kind of a season together, especially coming back postpartum. It was really important for me to kind of have this opportunity to see where I was at in order to figure out how I can get to where I want to be next summer.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think back and I've never competed at your level, but when I've had some periods where I've had injuries, and it's usually taken me about 2 years to get to the point where I'm racing at my highest level. And so, I think of, you had some injuries, your sacral fracture, and just being able to have some consistent buildup for you to run the times that you did in Europe, I just find amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, getting, I'm on my 14th year as a professional runner. So I've been in this sport for a long time. I've grown and matured. I met my husband, I got married, I now have a daughter. I've really grown up in the sport, not counting even the fact that I started running as a freshman in high school and, all the like kind of evolution that came through that. So running has certainly it's been a big part of my life for a long time. And I've, you know, benefited from so much from my career as a professional runner. It's also been interesting now this far into my career, seeing some of the ways that professional athletics could be better, especially when it comes towards women's involvement in sport. You know, when I got pregnant, I knew full well there was a chance that I could lose my health insurance because I have to earn my health insurance through competition and through ranking. I also knew full well that there was a chance that my contract could be reduced because I was, not competing or not ranked or whatever it might be, whatever the stipulations of my contract were, because there aren't maternity protections either for our healthcare or for our contracts. And some of that has changed. And,
how has that changed?
So when I was pregnant, I worked with Rose Monday, who's the head of USA track and field, like women's track and field, and a committee of women to create a maternity policy so that our professional female athletes would have extended protection and extended coverage for their health insurance during and after pregnancy. And then for the shoe companies, there about a year ago, there was 2 years ago now, there was a lot of there was a New York Times article and a lot of talk about the lack of maternity protections in shoe contracts. And so I don't know of all the shoe companies, what the count is of those that enacted maternity policies and maternity protections. But I know that Nike, which is my sponsor, has committed to changing their policies and how they treat their female athletes in maternity. So I'm proud to be involved with making the sport more friendly towards women. Women's history in professional athletics is so much shorter. And so, finding ways I've gotten to where I'm at because of the work of men and women who went before me to create opportunities. And so I see it as my duty really to, continue to make positive change where it needs to be. And, when I run into things that could be done better or that need to be rethought, and if I feel there's a way that I can contribute to positive change, then I feel like it's my duty to do so.
Yeah, no, you're fortunate that you have a strong voice, and there's strength in numbers as well. I remember, I think Allison Felix was the big story that came out during that period, and it's. I think it's always important to make sure that there's a level playing field in terms of being able to be successful, whether it's in sports or in the business world or otherwise. Are there other gaps that need to be filled to improve the environment for female athletes?
Yeah, we're friends. We've had many conversations. And one of the things that I'm involved with now is a startup called Parity. It's a sponsorship platform for female athletes. The statistic that we often quote, that because it just can't be said enough, it's pretty mind-boggling. Of the $66 billion global sports sponsorship marketplace, only 0.4% goes to women. So less than half a penny on the dollar goes into women's pockets. And of that, honestly, a lot of it goes to some of the top players like the Serena Williams or the Naomi Osakas in tennis. And when you look at the fact that most of the, from a consumer's perspective, even, when you look at the way that these companies are trying to market their product, a lot of those consumers, in fact, a majority of those consumers in a lot of cases are women. And yet when it comes to the sports sponsorship and marketing, sports marketing, women are so underrepresented and abysmally paid. So trying to create more opportunities for women to to earn money as professional athletes. I think that that's, even in my own contract, my own experience as a professional athlete, there's parity in pay for, prize money at track and field events. But when it comes to contracts, there's a lot of discrepancy in terms of, equal pay. And so those are areas that I think, need to be looked at more closely, that need to be reevaluated and need to be done better. So that's something, working with parity, trying to create more sponsorship opportunities for women is something that I'm very proud to be a part of and to be involved with and to be trying to make positive change.
Are you working across sports? So not just track and field, are you looking at changing the game across multiple sports?
Yeah, we work with, on our platform, which we launched in April, we have about 36 sports, maybe a little bit more than that, close to 400 athletes that have joined from, all across the board, Olympians, Paralympians, Olympic hopefuls, soccer, football, track and field, bobsled, like a whole number of mothers, young athletes. I think our youngest athlete was like 18 and our oldest was 61. So it's a whole range, many, I forget the exact number, but double digits, like 60s, 60 plus in Olympic medalists. So it's a really impressive group of women and we continue to grow. And I think the cool thing is that, we started this based on conversations we'd had with athletes and this understanding that this assumption that there was a need. And as more people, more women have become involved, seeing this community grow and also just how important it is to have this community of women who can kind of share knowledge and experience. We do free webinars for our parity athletes on a variety of topics like financial literacy and how to improve your Instagram presence and negotiation skills when you're working on a contract, whether it's a shoe contract or a speaking engagement or anything else. And so we try to provide educational, developmental services that supportive the community as well, having other people with similar causes. And then of course, the goal of finding opportunities for these women to get paid. We focus on the influencer marketplace right now, specifically Instagram, but finding ways for them to get paid to make posts about things that are important to them.
Sure. No, I mean, it's hopefully that the change happens sooner rather than later. One of the things that we've talked about a couple times is the issue of performance enhancing drugs, and it's not a new issue. I mean, I remember back in the 70s when the women from the East Bloc countries looked like linebackers in swimming and in sprinting and in track and field. And we knew there was something that was up there, right? And it's not something that's unique to Europe or the African countries. There's certainly enough bad actors from the United States. How does that impact you in terms of racing, and what's your perception of the issue in general?
It was really hard for me to realize it was such an issue when I came into the sport. I grew up in the United States. I grew up in an environment where sportsmanship was more important than anything else. It wasn't, it was how you won that was more important than whether you won. And, maybe that was naive of me, but I bought into that, it was your integrity and the way that you accomplished your goals that mattered. And then when I started racing professionally, my first pro season was 2008. And that year, several of the Russians had been banned because they'd been submitting urine samples that the DNA in competition of the urine didn't match the DNA out of competition. So they'd been submitting other urine. There's a variety of stories, whether they had body doubles or whether it was just, the whole, I don't exactly know the details, but the moral of the story was that they were banned for evading tests, I guess it would be. And in 2012, my London Olympic final in some news articles has been called one of the dirtiest races in Olympic history because of the 12 finalists, I think, gold and silver have already been disqualified. I think fourth place was one of the women who served a ban in 2008 for the false samples. And then more athletes behind me that were banned. So it's at least half the field that's already been banned for doping. And
wow.
And I'm not sure at this point in time what the status is, but for quite some time, the results, if you went to the Olympic webpage for my race, said, due to doping violations, the results of this race are not final. So, when the dust settles, currently I'm sitting in fourth, like I said, with an athlete in front of me who is set to get a medal, even though in the previous Olympics, she'd been banned for submitting false samples. And the stories, unfortunately, as the years go on, the stories just accumulate, and each athlete in the sport seems to have these kind of traumatizing experiences where they've been robbed of opportunities. I decided at the outset of my career that I would rather quit than cheat. And so when I start getting upset about kind of the repercussions of doping on my athletic career, I have to just keep coming back to the choice that I can make. And that is to compete cleanly in a way that honors my family, with results that are true to what my human capability is naturally, with hard work day after day, year after year, and the support of so many people that have kind of rallied around me to help me accomplish these incredible goals. So it's heartbreaking, to be honest. It's absolutely heartbreaking to think that, maybe there's a medal out there that I deserve to have that I may never get. But like I said, I have to just keep coming back to the choices that I can make. And the most important decision I made at the outset with regards to doping, which was that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the right way. And, come what may.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you think the situation has improved since 2012? Is it the same?
We had a former president of the IAAF, our former president before the current one, has been investigated and I believe convicted of kind of contributing to the doping problem. So that certainly was not at all aiding our sport in being better and more fair. In the last, 8 years, there have been more convictions. They continue to try to adapt testing. I think that they're trying to do better. I think that the leadership believes in trying to make the sport as clean as possible. I don't know, but I'm hopeful. I'm still competing, so I'm hopeful that maybe the next time around, if I'm so lucky to, and if things go well and I make my fourth Olympic team, that maybe the fourth time around will be a cleaner slate.
Fourth is a charm.
Yeah, fourth time's a charm. I don't know. I've currently got 2 fourth place finishes at the Olympics, one from London with the upgrade and one from Rio. So I don't know if fourth feels like a charm, but maybe my fourth Olympics will be a charm if I can make it there. So we'll see. For sure.
You've had a number of teams that you've been on, and you won your bronze medals in the World Championships, indoors and outdoors. If you were to look at one of your accomplishments or a short list of your accomplishments, which ones stand out for you?
Oh man, I think probably if I look at in terms of the medals, 2009, I was so young in the sport. I don't think I quite comprehended what an accomplishment it was. It's not that I took it for granted, but I'd had such a swift trajectory of success in professional athletics in 2008 and 9.
Everybody does this.
Yeah. I'm just it's comes so relatively easy. I mean, I work hard, but wow, I think that, it's been the second half of my career that is what I'm the most proud of in terms of, it was over the age of 30 that I ran my American record in the 1500 and my American record in the 5K. And I won the world relays in the distance medley relay, and we set the world record there. And I think, and even Rio to come in fourth, which was disappointing, very disappointing to not have a medal, but extremely strong performance against an extremely strong field, and to come back after that and win the Diamond League final that year, and then set the American record in the 5K. I think that series of performances sort of epitomizes me as an athlete, that I have my highs and I have my lows, but after every challenge, I take my time to mourn and regroup and set my eyes on how I can be better. And after every kind of setback, I've come back stronger, wiser, hardened, but still optimistic. So I think that that series of events in 2016 is one I'm really proud of. I think also, I think when I look back, this whole maternity, postpartum, and this COVID summer will be one that I look back on with a lot of pride. I didn't set personal bests this past summer, but I came back from a maternity situation where I felt like the odds were kind of set against me. I felt I had to get into shape quickly so that I could continue competing, but that led to me getting a stress fracture in my sacrum in February of 2019. And then I've been just trying to play catch up ever since. And so, despite that, though, I ran an Olympic standard last summer. And then this summer I ran the Olympic standard twice, if it had counted. So I'm proud of my kind of sort of tenacity. And I'm proud that I've tried to do things that haven't been done, like when I ran or that haven't been done in a while, I guess I should say. But in 2008, when I ran 4:01, and made the Olympic final, it had been years since we'd had anyone run quicker than maybe 4:03, 4:04, and we weren't consistently having women middle distance runners in the finals of the championships. And some of the things that I did, athletes came after and did better sooner. But even my American record that I broke in the 1500 was a 32-year-old record. I'm proud of the fact that I've set these big goals for myself and just chipped away at them and had belief and gotten knocked down and stepped back up again. And so I don't know that there's any one race that I think is my major success point. I think the body of work that I've compiled over the last 14 years is something that, when I actually sit down and think of it, it gives me great pride.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just think of the environment that we're in right now, just making it through the COVID-19 period as an average citizen is challenging, much less being able to race at such a high level. One of the things that I find interesting, there's a short list of women like you, Lauren Fleshman, and a few others that are multidimensional in terms of interest, right? There's the majority of track and field athletes are focused on track, but you have your other interests, whether it's the arts, and I know you started your Imagining More Foundation with your husband, Pablo. Can you give a little background on what it is and how it started up?
Yeah. Thank you for asking about it. So in 2012, my husband Pablo, and I started Imagining More, which is a nonprofit with the goal of encouraging young women in sports. And we also have an emphasis on kind of encouraging cross-cultural awareness between the US and Mexico. My husband is from Mexico. I'm from the United States. Our daughter is a Mexican American. And I think, it was a lot of things. I remember the specific moment that I felt compelled to do more. And it was in 2012 at altitude camp before the Olympics. and I was training at a track in San Luis Potosi, which is where we would do altitude training. And I just remember as I was doing my track workout around the track on the infield, there was a PE class, and the men in the PE class were really engaged, and they were playing soccer as part of PE. And the men were really engaged, and the women were just sitting on the grass, kind of picking flowers. And when the ball came near them, they'd get up and kick it. But there was just this sort of like lack of engagement with the sport. And I grew up having zero interest in sport. I loved dance. I was an Irish dancer from the ages of 5 to 16. And I started thinking about why it was that I never really felt compelled by sport. And the more I thought about it, I love the Olympics when the gymnasts and the figure skaters would come on. And because I saw like women, like I saw role models like that I could strive to be like, but on my kind of, normal day in weekly routine, the only sports that were really being covered when I was growing up were basketball, football, and baseball, all of which were just men's sports. And I didn't really have any role models to look up to. And I felt like as I got older and I did compete, the story of what it meant to be an athlete was very one-sided. It was very much from the perspective of like a men's team, a football team, or whatever it might be. And but I was having an experience on women's teams that was different and valid and complicated and all of the things too. So all of those things kind of contributed to the desire Pablo and I had to start this nonprofit and to, find ways to support, as I said, young women in sports and encourage their participation. The first project we did was, we called it the Borderless Arts Scholarship, where we basically selected one woman from Mexico and one from the US and gave them a grant to create an art project on what it meant to be a woman in sports. And not with any particular, we didn't give them any other prompt than that. We wanted to give them the opportunity to sort of just express themselves and express their experience, just to add more to the conversation. And in addition to that, since then, we've done that program twice. We've also, donated a lot of gear. Whenever I go to Mexico, we make time to donate gear to young athletes, both men and women, and also in the United States. Our goal in the future, we were hoping in December to do a coaching clinic on coaching female athletes, because there's also a lot of literature. Most of the books, the training books that I read growing up or that my coaches utilized were male coaches coaching male athletes. And then a lot of the training data was sort of extrapolated out to apply towards women's training. And I want to create a space to have a dialogue about, even just starting with me and my experience and my support team, what are the things that they've learned in coaching a successful female athlete, many successful female athletes in Coach Julian's case, just giving that insight, just once again, to add to the conversation, to have more information so that, we can hopefully help our next generation of athletes, both men and women, but, specifically with this coaching clinic for the female athletes, to help them have better opportunities and run even faster than my generation has.
Yeah, good for you. So one final question. So have you begun to think about what's next after track and field?
That question, I think since 2016, that question has really been on my mind. I am a planner. I like to have a long-term goal that I'm kind of working towards. And I remember in 2016, it was the first time, I usually have 1 year, where do I want to be? 5, 10. And we're not talking, I'm not it all has to be written out, but I at least like to have a sense of where my compass should point. And 2016 was the first time in my life where my, maybe my 5-year, but most likely my 10-year plan didn't necessarily include running, and or at least not in the professional running capacity. And that was really scary for me. I went to college. I worked hard on school to make sure that I, had good grades and had a good education that I could leverage later. But I've had a 14-year career now as a professional athlete. So it leaves me in this kind of, you know, how do I at 36 years old, you know, transfer into some capacity at a company where my experience can be utilized, which is actually how I got involved with Parity and their parent company, EOS, which is Elite's Optimization Services. They do career coaching and mentorship for female athletes. That was the origin of the company, and that's kind of where I started. So yeah, since 2016, I've been really trying to figure out where my calling is next. I'm very intrigued by the sports technology space. I think I always give the example of like the Nest thermostat. I'm not particularly interested in HVAC systems, but I'm so impressed by the idea that something as kind of taken for granted as the thermostat in your house, you know, most everybody had like the same one or two in the entire practically world. And that a company came along and was like, we can do this better. And they did. And it really kicked off a whole wave of this smart technology in the home. I think that athletics has been done the same way for so long. You know, it's a wonderful thing that coaches can have such a long career, but at a certain point, sometimes people stop being willing to be innovative, or it might be harder to, I mean, the pace of change is so fast these days that it's hard to keep up with the innovation. But I think that there's a lot of ways that technology could make sports better, safer, more efficient, that we could take the, you know, personalized information from, like, I would love if I could do it again, to have better tracking of my data over time, because really, if you can track your own personal data, then you, training data, health data, whatever it might be, you can figure out how you react to training and how you can best train for your body. So I'm intrigued by that space. I hope that I can find a position in that space. Working with Parity has been rewarding because I think of that as kind of within that sports tech arena. And yeah, whatever it is at the end of the day, I'm, based on all the things I've been touching on here, like I feel very driven by doing good and making change in a positive way. So, you know, I hope that I can find a profession where I'm able to continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, best of luck whenever the transition happens. And Shannon, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, Bob. It was great. I enjoyed it very much. Indeed.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. If you find this interesting, please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Take care.